people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. An interesting bit of news that comes to us by way of Tiara Brown's Instagram account. Unbeaten Tiara Brown from right here in the US of A. Unbeaten Tiara Brown, who's been quite vocal about landing a fight with Australia's own Sky Nicholson. It appears that Tiara will be making her return to the ring in a WBC featherweight title eliminator bout on April 18th at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia. The story. I've been asked in previous instances, how is it that Tiara Brown has been around for as long as she's been around, that she's been around a lot longer than Sky Nicholson, and she has a lot more pro fights than Sky Nicholson, but it's Sky that's getting the title shot. It's Sky that's going to be fighting for the WBC title very soon. How is that? Sky Nicholson debuted in 2022, whereas Tiara debuted all the way back there in 2016. But it's Sky that has the title shot. Sky Nicholson only has 9 pro fights, just 9 pro bouts, to Tiara Brown's 16. You're wondering, how is it that Sky got in line to fight for a belt ahead of Tiara? It's for 2 reasons, 2 primarily. Well, 1, Sky came into the sport of boxing with a major promotional outfit behind her. Upon going pro, she's already with Matchroom. She already developed a reputation as an amateur, a standout amateur, so Matchroom picked her up right away out of the amateurs. So that's 1. That's 1. 2 are eliminators. WBC eliminators. Sky has been fighting in WBC eliminators, whereas it seems like Tiara's just getting around to doing that. In order to climb up those ranks and position yourself to fight for one or some of the alphabet titles that are out there, you have to fight in those eliminators, whether it's WBA eliminators or WBC eliminators. Do you remember a ways back that I told you, if you want to box, if you just want to box, then you need a boxing license. To get a boxing license, you go to your local commission. But just getting a boxing license and boxing on non-televised bouts in the chicken gizzard circuit, that's not going to move you up those ranks. To really move yourself up those ranks and get in position to fight for a title, become a mandatory challenger, you have to fight in those eliminators. And that's the story here. That's the story when it comes to Tiara, that her very next fight in April, it's an eliminator. It doesn't appear to be a WBC final eliminator, the kind of eliminator that makes you the mandatory challenger if you win. But it is an eliminator, and that's encouraging because, as stated, Tiara Brown has been chasing down Sky Nicholson for a fight for well over a year now. People are aware of it. They've had their back and forths via social media, publicly. But just calling out Sky on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, that ain't gonna get you to fight because Sky ain't got no reason to fight you. There is nothing for her to gain. You have to give her something to lose. I anticipate that Sky Nicholson, she's going to beat Sarah Mahfoud, and she's going to become WBC champion. If you position yourself to become her mandatory challenger, she has to fight you, or she'll lose her belt. I don't think she wants to do that. If you ain't got nothing for her to gain, nothing for her to gain in fighting you, give her something to lose. Tiara Brown last saw action last month on the 17th. Before that, she fought 2 times last year and 2 times the year before. So she's been keeping busy. She's been keeping active. That's good. The drawback seems to have been that in spite of keeping active, those must not have been WBC eliminators, because a trip over to the World Boxing Council's official website and their ranks, it shows that Tiara Brown ranks in somewhere at number 15. She's way down there at 15. She's not even in the top 10. I understand that the sanctioning bodies and the mandatory process, it's not perfect. There are lots of fighters I've seen that have been left in limbo, waiting for the powers that be to order their title fights. I understand that, but this is Tiara's best bet. She's 35 years old. She ain't got no time to waste. If she wants to corner a fight with one of the somebodies at this weight, she's going to have to go through the sanctioning bodies. She's going to have to try to use them, because just calling people out on social media, that's not going to do it. She provides no incentive, no financial incentive. There's nothing to gain in fighting Tiara Brown? She's not a champion. She's not a big name. It's not a big money fight.
I'm not knocking her. I'm just saying that if you're Sky Nicholson, there's nothing in it for you in fighting Tiara. So if what Tiara wants to do is force the fight upon her, this is her best bet. Go through the mandatory process. Go through the WBC.
We don't yet know who she's going to be fighting, but on the face of it, this seems to be a step in the right direction. We'll see what happens.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, the rumor mill is spinning as it pertains to what's supposed to be the undercard of the upcoming Javante Davis versus Frank Martin fight. We already knew that David Benavidez versus Alexander Gvozdyk is tabbed to happen on the undercard. An Instagram account that goes by the name All Things Boxing 187 stated, "It's looking like this is the possible Tank versus Frank undercard. Say thank you to Al Heyman. This would be the best card of the year. Boxing ain't dead."
What's he talking about?
The rematch between Edwin De Los Santos and Rayo Valenzuela is tabbed to happen on that undercard, as well as the ring return of unbeaten up-and-comer at super middleweight David Morrell against Demetrius Andrade.
What?
I also heard a rumor that Eimantas Stanionis, after 2 years of inactivity, Eimantas Stanionis could be returning to action on this undercard opposite the ring Gabriel Maestre.
It's just a rumor, though. Why are you running with it?
Because this would be in keeping with what we've been seeing from the PBC so far, now that they're in bed with Amazon Prime. This is in keeping with what we're seeing on the Zoo versus Thurman undercard. A lot of fighters who would normally be headlining their own shows have all been stacked into one show to try to make it more appealing, make it more attractive.
That's what they're doing with Zoo versus Thurman. When you see Sebastian Fundora, when you see Rolly Romero,
Erislandy Lara, these are fighters that in previous instances headlined their own shows separately. They've packed them all into one show to try to make the show more marketable, more appealing to the consumer. And if this rumor checks out and we're getting all these fights on Javante's undercard, this is in keeping with that.
But is it actually more appealing to the consumer? Is it more marketable? Is it the way that All Things Boxing says it is, that this is the best card of the year?
No, I don't think this is the best card of the year. I don't think this is a better card than the card that we just saw. The Joshua versus Ngannou card, the undercard, and the fights that we got on that undercard. I don't think this is better than that. I don't. Think about it. You've got David Morrell and Demetrius Andrade. I mean, assuming that this rumor is true, and those two guys are going to box on the undercard, we just saw Demetrius Andrade quit in his corner. We just saw Demetrius Andrade retire in his corner not but a few months ago opposite the ring David Benavidez. That's what he's coming off of.
He's coming right off a loss, a knockout loss. You put him in there with David Morrell, he's going to get knocked out again.
He's going to get knocked out again, and what that would officially herald is his gatekeeper status. If this rumor is true, and this is what's next for Demetrius,
he's officially a gatekeeper.
You also have the rematch, the second fight between Edwin De Los Santos and Jose Valenzuela. Jose, he got knocked out by Edwin the first time they met. If their rematch is happening on Javante Davis's undercard,
it's not bad, but it's not great.
In terms of aesthetics, it would be an action fight. And audiences do love action fights, but I can't say that their rematch, them running it back, makes this fight value for money, because what's it going to cost? What are we talking about? $75? $80? We just paid half that for Anthony Joshua's last fight.
That was only $39.99.
This card isn't better than that one. This card isn't a better card, a better show than that show was. It's not.
Well, they are supposed to have David Benavidez versus Alexander Gvozdyk on that card.
And that's not a bad fight. I've said that before. It's the kind of fight that I've wanted to see David Benavidez in, because I feel like he's largely benefited from a size advantage, an obvious size advantage at super middleweight, that he's so much bigger than all the other super middleweights. Let's see him go up there to light heavyweight against those big boys. I don't mind this fight, but I can't tell you wholeheartedly that people are going to shell out their money in droves just to buy this thing. The main event, Javante Davis's main event, once again, it's a fight that no one was asking him to have. It's a fight that no one was asking for. So whenever you get out there and you bill a fight as a pay-per-view, $75, $80, you've got to compare it to what the other outfits are doing. What kind of fights are they putting on and providing to the customer? This summer, we're supposed to get Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol in a non-pay-per-view as part of our ESPN Plus subscription. That don't cost $80.
This does.
The pay-per-view we just got, the pay-per-view we just saw with Anthony Joshua, Francis Ngannou, it was a great card, and that didn't cost $80.
This does.
People get upset at me for being hypercritical of the PBC and their business practices, but their business practices just don't make sense in today's boxing landscape. It doesn't. When piracy is at an all-time high and more people are stealing fights now than they ever were in previous eras of boxing, you have to be very careful what you decide to bill as a pay-per-view. There needs to be a grassroots demand for it, because if there isn't, nobody's going to buy it.
And a lot of people are going to steal it.
That's reality. It's not because Ring IQ said it. That's just the veracity of things.
Well, they are doing this out of necessity.
A valid point that it seems most of the fights that the PBC are putting on are behind a paywall, likely because Amazon isn't giving them a budget to do regular fights. So the only way to make them happen is to bill them as pay-per-views, but that doesn't make them any more appealing. Guess what I'm saying is, in the past, in previous years for the PBC, billing a fight as a pay-per-view used to be a choice, whereas now they may not have one. In order to be able to even do fights at this point, where they are right now, they may not have a choice but to put them behind a paywall.
So does that make you want to buy this fight?
That's the question, isn't it? It's the PBC circumstances and the corner that they've painted themselves into. Is that what's supposed to make me and you buy this show?
Is that it?
It all boils down to whether or not the consumer is going to want to buy this fight. And when you consider that Turki Al-Sheikh, His Excellency, went as far as extending an olive branch to Javante Davis to maybe do the Devin Haney fight in Saudi on his dime, and instead of doing that, Javante is doing this.
What would have been a hotter ticket? Davis versus Haney or Davis versus Martin?
You must be expecting one hell of a sympathetic customer.
To have sympathy for your circumstances, sympathy for you delivering a fight that the customer wasn't asking for instead of one that they were.
A card that is more expensive than most other cards that are out there. But hey, that's the situation. And we'll see if the rumor checks out, and this is, in fact, the undercard for Javante Davis's next fight. Finally, in men's light heavyweight news, a few words from Zhilei Chang,
Giant Chinaman.
He says he expects Artur Beterbiev to stop Dmitry Bivol, and he's not the only guy I've seen saying that. I've seen quite a few people saying that Artur is going to be too much. It's going to be too strong for Dmitry.
I've seen people saying that.
That's a great fight, admitted Chang during a recent interview with BoxingScene.com. They're both great fighters, but Beterbiev will hurt him and probably end this fight with a knockout.
So all of his other fights have ended.
To a certain extent. Dmitry Bivol goes about his business entirely differently than Beterbiev. He doesn't stalk his opponents looking to take them apart. He enjoys using angles, footwork, and a high ring IQ. All of that is cute and effective, but against Beterbiev, Chang doesn't believe it will matter. I think Beterbiev's power will overwhelm Bivol's in-and-out footwork and his skill set. I think Beterbiev is just way too strong.
I mean, it is true. Artur's got more firepower than Dmitry, but the thing about power is, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter if you can't land.
So the question is, do you believe that Dmitry Bivol can offset Artur Beterbiev's power for 12 rounds, 36 minutes under the hot lights? Do you believe that?
Zhilei Zhang doesn't, but Zurdo Ramirez, he does.
Former WBO super middleweight champion turned cruiserweight contender Zurdo Ramirez, he's leaning towards Dmitry Bivol in the Beterbiev showdown, having had an up-close and personal look with at least one of these fighters, one of these champions.
Bivol.
Just from watching Beterbiev from the outside, the power he carries in both fists is scary. But with that said, if the two do get it on, he has a feeling that Bivol's full package would be a bit too much for Beterbiev to deal with. I think Bivol, Ramirez told ES News when asked who he believes will win. He's skillful, he moves. I like him.
You should. He beat you.
Something like devastating power is easier for the casual observer to interpret and understand, whereas angles and small nuances, subtleties, in-and-out movement,
Shot selection,
tempo, rhythm, footwork, it's harder to understand, it's harder to interpret, and that much harder for the casual observer to appreciate.
I get that.
Dmitry Bivol himself, being the mover that he is, he's not overly concerned about the size of the ring for the fight with Artur Beterbiev. That kind of minutia and those minor details remain minor to the longtime WBA champion.
That's a winner's mindset.
You know, to be honest, I'm not thinking about these details, Bivol told host Jamie Ward during the newest episode of the Matchroom Boxing podcast, which premiered on the YouTube channel of Hearn's promotional company. If I be in good shape, if I had a good training camp, it doesn't matter which ring we use. I can't think about these details. I have to think maybe my team, maybe nobody, because in fights, if you start thinking about which gloves, which ring, which hotel I should be in, it's too small details, which could disturb me from the main work, you know? And the main work is the training, sparring, mentally preparing for the fight.
That's a winner's mindset.
Dimitri can't get all caught up worrying about what kind of underwear Artur Beterbiev wears and how much sugar he takes in his coffee. Does he drink coffee? Does he not drink coffee? Does he drink tea?
Do the tires have enough tread?
Does he need to change the brake pads? And what about the brake fluid?
Am I gonna need an oil change?
Can't get caught up in that stuff because the outcome of the fight isn't going to be decided by those minor details. And if you're worrying about those minor details, then you're already defeated. Psychologically, you're already there.
Dimitri said he caught Artur Beterbiev's last performance, his fight with former champion Callum Smith.
Of course I watched the fight, Bivol said. And I wasn't surprised too much, to be honest, and Beterbiev was good, as I expected he would be with Smith. And I didn't see something new. He was powerful, like he was before, and he did his job well. It's important to note that Dimitri actually picked Artur to win that fight, on the predication that Callum Smith, in spite of his height and his length, he lets his opponents get too close to him, and Artur, he likes to fight within close quarters. Dimitri, like many of us, myself included, picked Artur to win that fight. But what about this one?
Yeah, Callum Smith has a bad habit of letting guys get too close to him, but Dimitri, he's the opposite. He moves a lot better than Callum, a lot better than anybody Artur has fought.
We're all human, Bivol, a longtime Russian citizen said. We all have weak sides, we all have good sides, and even him. We saw some of the moments which he wasn't good. I just need to create as much moments as I can that are not comfortable for him. I shouldn't let him to create some moments which are not comfortable for me, that's it. It's easy, to be honest. We don't need to think about it too much. Just do your work, and I have to do my work. And I know I could win if I do my work well.
What's his work?
The plan has to be staying on the balls of his feet, on his toes, in and out, disrupting Artur Beterbiev's rhythm, because you can't spend the whole night running from him like Marcus Brown did, but you can't spend the whole night engaging him like Anthony Yarde did. It's going to take a balance between the two.
Offense and defense, engaging and disengaging.
Disrupting Artur Beterbiev's rhythm, don't let him gain momentum, grow in confidence.
Dimitri's lighter on his feet than Artur. Not saying that Artur has cement blocks for feet, he doesn't, but Dimitri is lighter on his feet, little quicker to the draw too, though, not as strong.
But fast. As it pertains to strength, as it pertains to power, Artur's got buckets and buckets of power, but power don't count for nothing if you can't land. And Dimitri Bivol is a notoriously hard fighter to hit because of the movement, because of the angles, because of the speed.
Artur's got power. Yeah, he's got power, but he has to land.
Which could prove difficult. It's tough. It's a tough fight to edge. For years, I leaned towards Dimitri Bivol on the premise that Artur would lose a step by the time they fought. But he's just as dangerous now as he was before.
50-50 fight.
Pick'em fight. Who do you have winning?